Golden rays of the California sun filtered slowly through the blinds, painting the bedroom walls the warm tones of early morning. Victoria Chen lay awake, staring at the play of light and shadow on the ceiling. Beside her, her husband, Alex, was breathing steadily, deep in sleep. The digital clock on the nightstand silently counted down the minutes. 5:37. 15 minutes before the alarm went off and a new day would begin. A day that would change everything. Victoria carefully slipped out of bed, trying not to disturb her husband. She walked to the huge window that took up the entire wall and pulled back the curtain. Before her stretched a majestic view of the manicured streets of Atherton, the richest city in America, with the skyscrapers of Palo Alto in the distance and the shimmering surface of San Francisco Bay on the horizon. It was a view that had once filled her with pride and a sense of achievement. Now he only caused anxiety and doubt. Victoria Chen, 37, was the embodiment of the American dream. The daughter of Taiwanese immigrants, she grew up in a modest apartment in San Francisco, where her parents worked tirelessly to provide her with the best education. Victoria lived up to their expectations. She graduated with honors from high school, went to Stanford University, and then built a successful career in the world of venture capital. By the age of 30, she was running her own investment fund specializing in tech startups. Her sharp mind, intuition, and ability to see potential where others saw only risk had earned her a fortune in the hundreds of millions of dollars. But now, looking out over the waking city, Victoria felt lost. It had all started 3 months ago on one of those typical evenings of networking and cocktails. Another event for the tech elite was taking place at a luxurious mansion in the hills of Los Altos. Victoria, as usual, was the center of attention. Investors, entrepreneurs, and journalists were eager to exchange at least a few words with her. That's when she overheard a conversation that wasn't meant for her ears. Her husband, Alex Chen, co-founder of a promising startup called Next Tech Solutions, was whispering in a secluded corner with James Lee, his longtime friend and business partner. Michael is ready to increase his stake, but he needs guarantees, James said, looking around nervously. He'll get them. Just make sure everything is clean. Victoria can't suspect anything, Alex replied, and Victoria caught a note in his voice that she had never heard before. A mixture of anxiety and guilt. That brief exchange set off a chain of events that led Victoria to today. Who was this Michael? Why was Alex hiding something from her? And what kind of guarantees were required to increase her stake in a company that, as the co-founder's wife, she should know everything about? Victoria wouldn't be Victoria if she didn't start digging, cautiously at first, asking casual questions about the company's affairs, then more persistently, analyzing the financial statements of Next Tech Solutions that she could get her hands on. And the deeper she dug, the more discrepancies she found. Strange transactions routed through offshore accounts, contracts with vague wording and suspicious terms, and the name Michael Schmidt, which kept popping up in the documents but was never mentioned by Alex in their conversations. A knock on the bedroom door pulled Victoria out of her reverie. "Madam, breakfast will be ready in 15 minutes, came the voice of Maria, their housekeeper. "Thank you, Maria. We will be down soon," Victoria replied, glancing at her husband who was still asleep. She walked over to the closet, choosing an outfit for the day ahead. Today she was about to do something she had never even thought of 6 months ago: get a job at her husband's company. After weeks of thought and doubt, Victoria had come to the conclusion that the only way to find out the truth was to get inside Next Tech Solutions. Using her reputation in the world of technology and finance, she arranged a meeting with James Lee under the pretext of discussing potential investments. At this meeting, she planned to offer her services as a financial consultant. It was a risky move. James might become suspicious, but Victoria was confident that she could convince him of her purely business intentions. Alex stirred in his bed, slowly waking up. "Good morning, dear," he murmured, stretching. "You're up early today." Victoria smiled, trying to make it look natural. "Yes, I wanted to get ready for the meeting. You remember I'm meeting with James today?" Alex nodded, sitting up in bed. "Of course I do. I'm sure you'll have a productive conversation. James has always valued your opinion on financial matters." For a moment, Victoria thought she saw a hint of worry in her husband's eyes. But the expression disappeared as quickly as it had appeared, replaced by his usual warm smile. "Good luck today," Alex said, heading for the bathroom. "I'm sure whatever you discuss will be good for the company." Victoria watched the bathroom door close behind him, feeling a pang of guilt. She loved Alex. They had been through ups and downs in their 10 years of marriage, always supporting each other. He had been her rock, her best friend. And now she was preparing to spy on him, to infiltrate his company under false pretenses. But she saw no other way out. If Alex was really involved in something illegal, she had to find out about it. Not just for her own sake, but for his. Maybe it wasn't too late to fix this, to prevent a catastrophe that could ruin not only their lives, but the lives of hundreds of Next Tech Solutions employees. Victoria went down to the dining room and found that she had no appetite. She absent-mindedly picked at the perfect omelet Maria had cooked for her, while Alex scrolled through the news on his tablet. "Are you okay?" he asked, noticing her untouched breakfast. "Nervous about the meeting?" Victoria shook her head, forcing a smile. "No, just a little tired. I was up late last night working on a presentation for James." Alex nodded in understanding. "Don't overwork yourself, honey. You've already accomplished more than most people accomplish in a lifetime." The words, spoken with genuine concern, made Victoria's heart clench. How had they gotten themselves into a situation where she couldn't trust the man she loved more than anything else in the world? After breakfast, Alex left first. He had an early meeting with investors in San Francisco. Victoria was left alone in their sprawling home, preparing for her own mission. She looked over the prepared presentation again. At first glance, it was a standard analysis of the financial condition of Next Tech Solutions, with proposals for optimization and development. But behind the dry numbers and graphs, there was a carefully thought-out plan. Victoria was going to offer James her services as a consultant on financial strategy. This would give her access to the company's internal documentation, the opportunity to communicate with key employees, attend important meetings, and perhaps reveal the secret that had been bothering her for the past months. At exactly 10 o'clock in the morning, Victoria entered the main office of Next Tech Solutions in Palo Alto. The modern building of glass and steel towered over the neighboring buildings, symbolizing the ambitions and innovative spirit of the company. At the reception, she was met by a young woman with bright red hair and a scattering of freckles on her face. "Welcome to Next Tech Solutions, Mrs. Chen," she smiled warmly. "Mr. Lee is waiting for you in the conference room on the 20th floor." Victoria could feel her heart pounding as she rode up in the elevator. She tried to calm herself by reminding herself that this was far from her first important business meeting. But the stakes had never been higher. James Lee met her at the entrance to the conference room. A tall, fit man with piercing eyes and barely noticeable gray at the temples, he radiated the confidence and charisma of a natural leader. "Victoria, it's good to see you," James shook her hand warmly. "I admit I was surprised when you asked to meet, but I'm always happy to discuss business with one of the best financial minds in the business." Victoria smiled, trying to look casual. "Thank you, James. I have been following the success of Next Tech Solutions for a long time and thought that my experience could be useful for you in the next stage of development." They sat at a long table made of polished wood. Panoramic windows opened up a breathtaking view of the city and the bay in the distance. Victoria could not help but notice the symbolism of the moment. It was as if she was looking down on a world that she had come to consider her own, but which now seemed full of secrets and dangers. The next 2 hours were spent in an intense discussion of financial strategy. Victoria presented her analysis of the company's current position, highlighted areas for potential growth, and proposed several innovative approaches to attracting investment. James listened intently, asking the occasional pointed question. Victoria sensed that she had impressed him, but she also noticed that he seemed to be sizing her up, trying to understand the true motives behind her offer. "I have to say, Victoria, your analysis is impressive," James said, leaning back in his chair. "But I can't help but wonder, why now? You could be consulting for any company in the Valley. Why Nextech Solutions?" Victoria was prepared for the question. She smiled softly, trying to sound sincere and confident. "You know, James, after so many years in venture capital, I realized that I wanted to do more. Not just invest in companies, but be a part of something truly innovative. Nextech Solutions is one of the most promising companies in the artificial intelligence space. Besides," she paused, "it's my husband's company. I want to contribute to your mutual success." James nodded thoughtfully. "I understand. But you know how it can look. The wife of one of the founders gets access to the company's internal information." "That's why I came to you and not Alex," Victoria countered. "I want this to be a purely business agreement. No concessions, no special conditions. I'm willing to sign any confidentiality documents." There was silence in the room for a few seconds. James studied Victoria carefully, as if trying to read her mind. Finally, he smiled and extended his hand. "Okay, Victoria, let's give it a try. We'll start with a 3-month contract as a financial advisor. If all goes well, we can discuss a longer-term partnership." Victoria shook his hand, feeling relief and anxiety mingle inside her. The first step had been taken, but it was only the beginning. As they left the Nextech building, Solutions, Victoria took a deep breath of fresh air. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange. She got into her electric car and closed her eyes for a moment, trying to collect her thoughts. Her plan had worked, but now came the hard part. She had to balance the roles of professional consultant and undercover investigator, all the while remembering that not only her reputation was at stake, but also her marriage. Victoria started the car and merged into the evening traffic. On the way home, she thought about the upcoming conversation with Alex. How to explain to him her decision to work for his company without raising suspicions. Parking at her house, Victoria noticed that Alex's car was not there yet. This gave her a moment to collect her thoughts. As she entered the house, she heard Maria's voice from the kitchen. "Ma'am, dinner will be ready in an hour. Mr. Chen called and said he would be late." "Thank you, Maria," Victoria replied, heading up to her home office. She turned on her computer and opened the encrypted folder where she kept all the data she had collected over the past months on suspicious activity at Nextech Solutions. A list of strange transactions, copies of contracts with vague wording, notes about Alex's unexplained meetings. It all added up to a disturbing picture. Victoria added a new entry about today's meeting with James, noting his reaction to her proposal and a few interesting details she had noticed in the company's office. Suddenly, a name on one of the documents caught her eye. Emily Tanaka, COO of Nextech Solutions. Victoria remembered catching a glimpse of her in the office today, a young woman with sharp eyes and a confident gait. Perhaps Emily could be the key to unraveling the mystery surrounding the company. The sound of the front door opening pulled Victoria out of her thoughts. Alex was back. "Honey, I'm home!" His voice came from downstairs. Victoria quickly closed all the files and turned off the computer. Taking a deep breath, she went downstairs, preparing for an important conversation. Alex was waiting for her in the living room, lounging on the couch with a glass of wine in his hand. When he saw his wife, he smiled and patted the seat next to him. "How did the meeting with James go?" he asked as Victoria sat down next to him. She thought for a moment, weighing each word. Very well, in fact. So well that James offered me a contract as a financial consultant. Alex raised his eyebrows in surprise. Really? And what did you say? I accepted, Victoria said, carefully watching her husband's reaction. It's a 3-month contract with an option to extend. I thought it was a great opportunity to contribute to the development of the company. A strange expression flashed across Alex's face, a mixture of surprise, concern, and relief, but he quickly pulled himself together and smiled. That's unexpected, he said. But I'm happy for you, dear. Your experience will truly be of great value to Nextech Solutions. Victoria felt the tension ease a little. It seemed her decision hadn't aroused Alex's suspicions, at least for now. Thank you for your support, she said, leaning down to kiss her husband. I'm sure it will be an interesting experience. Later, lying in bed, Victoria thought about the days ahead. Tomorrow would be her first official day at Nextech Solutions. She would be walking on thin ice, trying to balance her professional responsibilities with her undercover investigation. Alex was sleeping peacefully next to her, and Victoria couldn't help but think about how much everything had changed. Not long ago, she would have shared all her thoughts and doubts with him. Now, a wall of secrets and mistrust had grown between them. But she was determined to get to the bottom of the truth, no matter how bitter it might be. For herself, for Alex, for all those people whose lives could be affected by what was happening at Nextech Solutions. With these thoughts in mind, Victoria finally fell into a restless sleep, unaware that her decision to take a job at her husband's company had set in motion a chain of events that would change not only their lives, but the entire tech landscape. Tuesday morning, May 24th, 2023, marked the beginning of a new chapter in Victoria Chen's life. A chapter that would lead her to discoveries she never imagined and force her to make choices that would determine the future of not only her family, but an entire industry. At exactly 8 o'clock in the morning, Victoria Chen walked into the headquarters of Nextech Solutions with a mixture of excitement and determination. It was her first official day at the company, and she was determined to make the most of every minute. The red-haired girl at the reception, whom Victoria now knew as Sophie, smiled at her warmly. "Good morning, Mrs. Chen. Your temporary pass is ready. Mr. Lee has asked that you come up to his office as soon as you arrive." Victoria went over her plan in her mind as she rode the elevator to the 20th floor. Her official role was as a financial consultant, but her real goal was to uncover the secrets behind the facade of a successful tech company. James Lee greeted her with a wide grin. "Victoria, it's great to have you on board. Let me show you around your new office and introduce you to some of the key people." The next hour passed in a whirlwind of introductions and handshakes. Victoria watched each person introduced to her, looking for any sign of nervousness or reserve. She paid particular attention to Emily Tanaka, the chief operating officer. Emily, a slender woman in her mid-30s with short hair and piercing eyes, seemed reserved and a little wary. "Pleased to meet you, Mrs. Chen," Emily said, shaking Victoria's hand. "I hope your expertise will help us streamline our financial processes." Victoria heard the tension in her voice. "I hope so too, Miss Tanaka. I can't wait to get to know your work better." After meeting the team, James led Victoria to her new office, a small but cozy space overlooking the Palo Alto skyline. "Here, this is for you," James said, handing her a folder. "These are the key financial reports for the last quarter. Look them over and let me know if you have any questions." Left alone, Victoria dove right into her work. She studied every page, every number, looking for discrepancies or oddities. After 3 hours of intensive analysis, she sat back in her chair, feeling slightly dizzy from the abundance of information. On the surface, everything looked perfect. The numbers matched, the reports were flawless. But Victoria's intuition told her that there was more behind the facade. Suddenly, a small detail in one of the reports caught her eye. A transaction for $3 million conducted through a subsidiary in Singapore. The transaction itself was not unusual, but the date coincided with the day she had overheard Alex and James talking at the party. Victoria made a mental note to check the transaction more closely. It could be a coincidence, but it could also be the first clue in her investigation. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. "Come in," she said, quickly closing the folder of reports. Emily Tanaka walked into the office. "Mrs. Chen, I was wondering if you might want to have lunch with me. I might be able to tell you more about our operating structure." Victoria couldn't believe her luck. This was the perfect chance to get to know one of the company's key players better. "It would be my pleasure, Miss Tanaka. And please call me Victoria." They went to a small cafe not far from the office. Over a light salad and mineral water, the conversation flowed smoothly from general topics to more specific questions about the company's operations. "Emily," Victoria began, trying to keep her voice casual, "I noticed an interesting transaction in the reports. $3 million through the Singapore branch. Is this common practice for the company?" Emily paused for a moment, her fork halfway to her mouth. Then she slowly placed it on her plate. "Oh, that's what you mean. Yes, we sometimes process large transactions through our overseas branches. It helps with tax optimization." Victoria nodded, watching the other woman's reaction carefully. "I understand. Still, $3 million is a significant amount. Could you tell me more about the purpose of this transfer?" Emily frowned slightly. "I'm afraid I don't have all the details. This was a project that James and your husband were directly involved in. Perhaps you should discuss it with them." Victoria felt her heart beat faster. She had clearly touched on a sensitive topic. "Of course, I'll check with them. I'm just trying to get a full picture of the company's financial flows." The rest of the lunch was a bit tense. Emily became more reserved in her answers, and Victoria was careful not to push too hard lest she arouse suspicion. Back in the office, Victoria immediately opened her laptop and began taking coded notes on her conversation with Emily. The COO's reaction to the question about the Singapore transaction clearly required further investigation. Victoria spent the next few hours immersed in studying the structure of the company and its overseas branches. She created a complex diagram of connections and financial flows, trying to find patterns or anomalies. Later in the evening, when most of the staff began to go home, there was a knock on her office door. It was James Lee. "How was your first day, Victoria?" he asked, sitting on the edge of her desk. "Very productive," she replied with a smile. "I've already begun to piece together the overall financial picture of the company. By the way, James, I wanted to ask about a transaction." But before she could finish her sentence, James's phone rang. He glanced at the screen and frowned. "Sorry, Victoria. I need to answer this. Can we discuss this at our morning meeting tomorrow?" With that, he quickly left the office, answering the phone as he went. Victoria only managed to catch a fragment of his sentence. "Yes, Michael, I understand the importance of—" Victoria's heart skipped a beat. Michael. The same name she'd heard Alex and James talk about at the party. Whoever this Michael was, he was clearly playing a major role in what was happening. Victoria sat back in her chair, adrenaline pumping through her veins. The first day of the investigation was over, and although she had more questions than answers, she felt like she was on to something. As she packed her things to go home, Victoria considered her next steps. She needed to deepen her research into the Singapore branch, learn more about this mysterious Michael, and perhaps try to establish closer contact with Emily Tanaka. Victoria felt a mixture of excitement and anxiety as she walked out of the Nextech Solutions building. She knew she was on a dangerous path that could lead to shocking discoveries, but she was determined to see it through, no matter the cost. Ahead of her were new challenges, unexpected turns, and, perhaps, answers to the questions that had been bothering her for the past months. The first step had been taken, and there was no turning back. A week had passed since Victoria Chen began her undercover investigation at Next Tech Solutions. Every day she delved deeper into the maze of financial records, corporate structures, and mysterious transactions. But despite her best efforts, the key to the solution still eluded her. On Friday evening, after most of the employees had already gone home, Victoria lingered in the office. She sat at her desk, surrounded by stacks of papers and spreadsheets open on her laptop, trying to find connections between disparate facts. Suddenly, a noise in the hallway caught her attention, muffled voices and the sound of rapid footsteps. Victoria carefully approached the door of her office and listened. "We need to act quickly. Michael is getting impatient," it was the voice of James Lee. "I understand, but we can't take any chances. One wrong move and everything will collapse," a female voice answered, which Victoria recognized as Emily Tanaka. The footsteps and voices began to move away. Victoria, on a sudden impulse, slipped quietly out of her office and followed them, keeping a safe distance. James and Emily walked through the empty office and headed for the elevators. But instead of calling the elevator, James took out his key card and swiped it across a hidden reader next to the elevator panel. One of the walls suddenly slid aside, revealing a passage into a hidden room. Victoria's heart was pounding. She had never seen this secret entrance before, nor did she even know it existed. As soon as James and Emily had disappeared behind the secret door, Victoria ran to the elevator panel. She didn't have a key card, but she was determined to find a way to get into this mysterious room. Victoria carefully examined the panel, looking for any clues or hidden mechanisms. Her gaze fell on a barely noticeable slot next to the key card reader. Acting on instinct, she took her credit card out of her pocket and carefully inserted it into the slot. To her surprise and relief, there was a soft click, and the secret door swung open. Victoria paused, listening. After making sure there were no sounds coming from behind the door, she carefully slipped inside. She found herself in a narrow hallway, dimly lit by a bluish light. The air here was cooler than in the main office, and filled with the soft hum of working equipment. Victoria moved forward slowly, trying to step as quietly as possible. The hallway led her to a large room filled with server racks and monitors. This was clearly some kind of secret data center. But what could Next Tech Solutions be hiding here? Victoria heard muffled voices coming from behind one of the server racks. She approached cautiously, trying to remain unnoticed. "The algorithm is almost ready," James was saying. "A few more days and we can launch full-scale testing." "What about ethical restrictions?" Emily asked. "We can't ignore the potential risks." "Ethics?" James waved his hand irritably. "Michael has invested too much money in this project for us to stop now because of some moral dilemmas. Imagine what we can do with this technology. We can predict and shape the future." Victoria felt a chill run down her spine. What algorithm were they talking about? And how could it shape the future? She peered out from behind the server rack and saw James and Emily standing in front of a huge screen. Lines of code and complex graphs flashed on the screen, and Victoria couldn't make sense of them. Suddenly, her gaze fell on the small table next to James. On it lay a folder marked Top Secret, Project Cassandra. Victoria's heart skipped a beat. She had to know what was in that folder. As if he'd heard her thoughts, James picked up the folder and headed out of the room. "Come on, we need to discuss this somewhere safer," he said to Emily. As soon as they left, Victoria rushed to the computer they were standing at. The screen was locked, but she noticed a small flash drive sticking out of one of the ports. Without thinking, Victoria pulled out the flash drive and hid it in her pocket. Then, realizing that James and Emily could return at any moment, she hurried to the exit of the secret room. Already in her office with trembling hands, Victoria inserted the flash drive into her laptop. The screen filled with files and folders with mysterious names: Predictive Model A7, Cassandra Neural Network, simulations of social scenarios. When Victoria opened one of the documents, she felt the ground slipping out from under her feet. This was not just a new technology or an innovative algorithm. Nextech Solutions was developing an artificial intelligence system capable of predicting future events with incredible accuracy, and even more frighteningly, influencing human decision-making on the scale of entire communities and even countries. Victoria sat back in her chair, a wave of shock and horror washing over her. If this technology fell into the wrong hands, the consequences could be catastrophic. Democracy, free will, the very fabric of society, all of it could be at risk. But the scariest thing was the realization that her husband, Alex, had to know about this project. He was a co-founder of the company. How could he be involved in something so dangerous and unethical? Victoria knew she now had information that could change the world. But what could she do with this knowledge? Who could she trust? At that moment, her phone vibrated. A message from Alex. "Honey, you're out late today. Are you okay?" Victoria stared at the screen, feeling love and suspicion, fear and determination warring within her. She knew that every action, every word, would matter. Slowly, taking a deep breath, she began to type out a reply. "I'm fine. I'll be home soon. We need to talk." After hitting send, Victoria knew there was no turning back. She had made an unexpected and shocking discovery, and now she had to decide what to do with this information. The future of not only her family, but perhaps the entire world depended on her next steps. Turning off her computer and hiding the flash drive in a secret pocket of her bag, Victoria left the Nextech Solutions office. The Palo Alto night air, usually a relief after a long day of work, now seemed heavy and oppressive. As Victoria got into her car, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. Project Cassandra was too big and dangerous for its creators not to have taken precautions against information leaks. She started the engine but was in no hurry to move. She needed to collect her thoughts before meeting Alex. What would she tell him? How could she find out how deeply he was involved in this project without giving herself away? 3 days had passed since Victoria Chen discovered the existence of Project Cassandra. 3 days filled with agonizing doubts, sleepless nights, and careful planning. She knew she couldn't act rashly. There was too much at stake. On Monday morning, Victoria made a decision. She couldn't let Project Cassandra continue, but she also couldn't risk the information falling into the wrong hands. She needed allies. The first person she decided to turn to was Emily Tanaka. Despite her involvement in the project, Emily seemed Victoria's most likely ally. Her doubts about the ethical aspects of Cassandra could be the key to resolving the situation. Victoria sent Emily a message, inviting her to an early lunch outside the office. To her surprise, Emily agreed almost immediately. They met at a small cafe in Menlo Park, far enough away from the Nextech Solutions office to avoid running into co-workers. "Thank you for agreeing to meet, Emily," Victoria began as soon as they sat down at a table in a secluded corner of the cafe. Emily looked tense. "I'm guessing this isn't just a friendly lunch, Victoria. What did you want to talk about?" Victoria took a deep breath. The moment of truth had arrived. "Project Cassandra," she said quietly, watching Emily's reaction carefully. Emily's face instantly paled. She looked around as if checking to see if anyone was eavesdropping on their conversation. How did you know?" she whispered. "It doesn't matter," Victoria replied. "What matters is that I know about the potential danger of this project, and I think you know it too, Emily." Emily was silent for a long time, looking into her coffee cup. Finally, she looked up at Victoria. "I knew this would happen sooner or later. The project has gotten out of control, Victoria. We started with good intentions to create a system that would help prevent crises, improve people's lives. But now I'm afraid we've created a monster. Emily spent the next hour telling Victoria everything she knew about the Cassandra project, about how the original idea of predicting social trends turned into a tool for manipulating public opinion, about how James Lee and the mysterious investor Michael Schmidt planned to use the technology to influence political processes and financial markets. "What about Alex?" Victoria asked, feeling her heart squeeze with fear of the answer. Emily shook her head. "Alex, he doesn't know all the details. James has kept him out of the more questionable aspects of the project. I think he suspects something is wrong, but he doesn't have the full picture." Victoria felt a small sense of relief, but she knew that didn't change the gravity of the situation. "What do we do, Emily? We can't let this continue." Emily nodded. "I've been collecting evidence, documents, conversations, code samples, but I was afraid to go it alone. With your help, we might have a chance to stop this." They spent another hour working out a plan of action. It was decided to gather all the evidence they had and turn to a trusted journalist who could help break the story without letting the technology fall into the wrong hands. Victoria returned to her office feeling a mixture of determination and fear. She knew the next few days would be the most important of her life. That evening, Victoria finally decided to talk to Alex. She couldn't keep the truth from him any longer, especially now that she knew he was unaware of the true nature of the project. "Alex, we need to talk," she said when they were alone after dinner. Alex looked at her with concern. "What's wrong, dear? You haven't been yourself lately." Victoria took a deep breath and began to tell him about her suspicions, about the secret investigation, about Project Cassandra. With each word, Alex's face grew paler. I didn't know," he whispered when Victoria finished. "James told me it was just advanced analytics. I had no idea." Victoria took his hand. "I believe you, Alex, but now we have to act. We can't let this technology see the light of day." Alex nodded, his eyes alight with determination. "You're right. We have to stop this." The next 2 days were a frenzy. Victoria, Emily, and Alex worked virtually around the clock, gathering all the evidence they could. They moved carefully, trying not to attract the attention of James or anyone else involved in the project. By the 3rd day, they were ready. Victoria contacted Samantha Zhao, a reporter at the San Francisco Chronicle, known for its investigative reporting on technology. They agreed to meet in a neutral location, a small park on the outskirts of Palo Alto. Victoria, Emily, and Alex arrived at the meeting carrying several flash drives of data and a thick folder of documents. Samantha was already waiting for them, sitting on a bench overlooking the bay. "Thank you for meeting with us," Victoria began. "What we're about to tell you could change the world of technology forever." They spent the next 2 hours explaining Project Cassandra to Samantha, showing her the documents, explaining the potential consequences. Samantha listened with growing amazement and alarm. This is incredible," she said when they were finished. "If this is true, it's the biggest scandal in history." "That's why we've come to you," Alex replied. "We trust you to bring this information to the public responsibly and carefully." Samantha nodded. "I understand the gravity of this situation. Give me a few days to verify the facts and prepare the story. I promise I will tread with the utmost caution." It was getting dark when they parted. Victoria, Emily, and Alex stood by their cars, feeling a strange mixture of relief and anxiety. "What now?" Emily asked. "Now we wait," Victoria replied, "and brace ourselves for the storm that's about to break." Unbeknownst to them, at that very moment in the Next Tech Solutions office, James Lee received an alarming message from his security team. Security cameras had captured their encounter with the journalist. Monday morning, July 15, 2023, changed the landscape of Silicon Valley forever. Samantha Zhao's article in the San Francisco Chronicle dropped a bombshell. The headline, Project Cassandra, How a Tech Giant Tried to Control the Future, was splashed across every news channel. The reaction was immediate and deafening. Nextech Solutions shares plummeted 70% in the first few hours of trading. The Federal Bureau of Investigation launched a major investigation into the company. James Lee was arrested while trying to leave the country, and the mysterious investor Michael Schmidt was put on an international wanted list. Victoria, Alex, and Emily found themselves in the eye of the storm. Their phones were ringing off the hook with calls from reporters, lawyers, and law enforcement. But despite the chaos, they felt relieved that the truth had finally come out. Over the following weeks, a major trial unfolded. Victoria, Alex, and Emily served as key witnesses, revealing details of Project Cassandra and its potential impact on society. 3 months after the revelation, the court handed down its verdict. James Lee was found guilty of a number of crimes and sentenced to a lengthy prison term. Nextech Solutions was dissolved and its assets sold to compensate the victims. Life was never the same for Victoria, Alex, and Emily. Their actions made them heroes in the public eye, but they also changed their careers and personal lives forever. Victoria and Alex decided to use their experience and fame to create a nonprofit focused on ethics in technology. Emily became a cybersecurity consultant, helping companies protect themselves from similar threats.